The marble underfoot turned slick the instant before Brielle Zimmerman's heel caught the edge of the threshold, sending her sprawling forward through velvet curtains into a cathedral of silence and candlelight, where 100 pairs of crimson eyes turned to watch her slide across polished obsidian on her stomach, phone clattering away, tour clipboard scattering papers like autumn leaves. She registered details in fragments, vaulted ceilings disappearing into shadow, pale figures in midnight silk and brocade, standing in perfect rows, an altar carved from black stone where a man, no, not a man, something far more ancient, held a crown of silver thorns inches above his own white hair. "Oh, God!" Brielle whispered, palms flat against stone so cold it burned. "Oh, God, I'm so sorry. The door was unlocked. I thought this was the East Gallery." The figure at the altar moved. His face could have been carved from the same pale stone as the walls, all sharp angles and aristocratic bone structure, eyes like frozen rubies boring into her with an intensity that stopped her breath. White hair fell past his shoulders in a sheet of silk, and when he lowered the crown, it wasn't to his own head, but down, down, toward where she still lay, sprawled at the foot of the dais. "Wait," someone in the crowd started. The crown touched Brielle's head with a whisper of metal on hair. The silence shattered into chaos. "Your Majesty, the law, this is unprecedented. She's human. The old statute states clearly, the man the king," her mind supplied, helplessly raised one hand. The room fell silent, as though he'd severed every voice with a blade. "By the old law," he said, voice like distant thunder, "whoever the crown touches in the moment of ascension shares the throne." His eyes never left Brielle's face. "The law is absolute." A woman stepped forward from the crowd, her white hair twisted into an elaborate coronet, dressed in crimson silk that made her pale skin luminous. "Lord Vladric, surely you don't mean to honor an accident." She stumbled into sacred ceremony. "The law makes no provision for intention." Vladric Caney. The name surfaced from museum orientation materials Brielle had skimmed 3 hours ago, facts about the Caney Foundation that owned this building. The charitable recluse who never appeared in daylight lifted the crown from Brielle's head and placed it on his own. She will remain as co-regent. Brielle finally managed to push herself to her knees, face burning. This is insane. I'm a tour guide. I took a wrong turn looking for the bathroom." "Then you have stumbled into a far more permanent position." Vladric extended a hand. After a frozen moment, Brielle took it. His fingers were cold as winter rivers, strong enough that he pulled her upright with no visible effort. Standing, she barely reached his shoulder. Up close, he was devastating beautiful in the way glaciers were beautiful, remote and deadly and utterly inhuman. "I can just leave," Brielle said, voice shaking. "We can pretend this never happened. I won't tell anyone about whatever this is." "You would be dead before you reached the doors." He said it without inflection, simple fact. "There are those in this court who would see any human intruder destroyed. The crown protects you, for now." "For now?" "The Coronation Council meets in 3 days to confirm the succession." His thumb moved once across her knuckles, a gesture that might have been reassurance or claim. "Until then, you are under my protection. You will stay in the palace. You will learn our customs. You will survive." A man emerged from the shadows near the altar, younger looking than Vladric, but with the same predatory grace, the same white hair though his was cropped short. "This is madness." "Vladric! The council will never accept. The council will accept the law." Vladric's voice dropped several degrees. "Or they will face me, personally." The younger vampire's jaw tightened, but he inclined his head. "As you say, my king." Vladric turned back to the assembled court. "The ceremony is concluded. Spread word through all territories. The throne is claimed and the crown is shared. Any who challenge this invoke blood right and will face me in the old way." The crowd dispersed like smoke, though Brielle felt their stares like brands on her skin. Within moments, the vast throne room stood empty, except for herself, Vladric, and the short-haired vampire who watched her with undisguised hostility. "Sarath will show you to your chambers," Vladric said, releasing her hand. "Sleep. Tomorrow your education begins." "Wait." Brielle caught his sleeve, then immediately regretted the boldness when those crimson eyes fixed on her. "Why did you do that?" You could have just removed me. Had security escort me out. Why invoke some ancient law? For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then, because the alternative was your death, and I preferred you alive. He was gone before she could respond, moving with that inhuman speed that left only a whisper of displaced air. Sareth cleared his throat. This way, co-regent. The title dripped with sarcasm. The chambers were larger than Brielle's entire apartment, all dark wood and burgundy velvet with windows that looked out over a city she recognized her city, the downtown skyline glittering with mundane human life. She'd lived here 7 years and never known vampires were real, let alone that they had a palace hidden beneath a historical museum where she'd worked for 6 months. There are guards outside, Sareth said from the doorway. For your protection. Or to keep me from running. Both. He studied her with cold appraisal. You should know that many in the court believe Vladric has lost his senses. Humans are food, pets, cattle, not queens. I don't want to be queen. Then you're wiser than you appear. He paused. The Coronation Council will test you. Old laws or not, they'll find ways to prove you unworthy. When they do, they'll demand your removal, or your execution. Great, Brielle muttered. Fantastic. This is I was supposed to finish my shift and go home to bad takeout and reality TV. That life is over. Sarath's expression might have been pity, or simply observation. Survive the next 3 days. It's all any of us can do. He left her alone with silk sheets and existential terror. Brielle didn't sleep. How could she, knowing she was surrounded by creatures that drank blood and moved like shadows? She paced until dawnlight crept through the windows, and then watched in fascination as heavy shutters rolled down automatically, sealing the room in temperature-controlled darkness. Right. Sunlight. That was actually real then. A knock came at mid-morning, followed by the entrance of a pale woman in a severe black dress carrying an armload of clothing. The king requires your presence in the council chamber, she said without preamble. You'll wear these. The garments were gorgeous, a deep sapphire gown that looked medieval and modern at once, fitted bodice giving way to flowing skirts, silver embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Brielle, dressed in numb silence, let the woman who introduced herself as Mira arrange her brown hair into an elegant twist and followed her through corridors lined with portraits of pale, beautiful people in clothing from every century. The council chamber was smaller than the throne room, but no less intimidating. A long obsidian table dominated the space, surrounded by high-backed chairs where a dozen vampires sat in judgment. Vladric occupied the head of the table, unchanged from the night before, except for the crown now resting at his right hand. An empty chair waited at his left. Sit, he said when Brielle hesitated. She sat, hyper-aware of every immortal gaze on her mortal skin. The woman who'd spoken during the coronation, Vladric, had called her something. Brielle couldn't remember, leaned forward with a smile like a knife wound. So, the little human who stumbled into history. Tell us, Brielle Zimmerman, what do you know of our people? Nothing, Brielle said honestly. Until last night, I didn't know you existed. Yet you expect us to accept you as co-regent. Fascinating. I don't expect anything. I didn't ask for this. No, you merely crashed into our most sacred ceremony and contaminated it with your presence. The woman's smile never wavered. I am Isolde Corvin, head of the old families, and I think you are either spectacularly stupid or part of a conspiracy. I'm definitely the first one, Brielle shot back. The door was unlocked. I was lost. I'm very sorry, but I can't change what happened. No, Vladric's voice cut across the table. But we are all bound by what happened, by the law. Unless, Isolde, you mean to challenge the law itself? Isolde's eyes narrowed. The law is sacred, but it was written when such accidents were impossible, when humans knew their place and feared to trespass. Perhaps it requires reinterpretation. The law is absolute, Vladric repeated, or it is nothing. Choose. The tension stretched taut enough to snap. Finally, Isolde inclined her head. The law stands, but if the girl is to share your throne, she must prove worthy of it. The old ways demand trials. What kind of trials? Brielle asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. Tests of courage, wisdom, and will. Isolde's smile returned. You have 3 days. Pass, and the council will confirm your position. Fail, she let the sentence hang. And if I refuse to play your games? Then you refuse the crown and lose its protection. Isolde glanced at Vladric. Unless our king means to break centuries of tradition to shelter one fragile human? Vladric's expression remained stone. She will face the trials. If she proves worthy, you will all kneel. Brielle's heart hammered. And if I don't? For the first time, Vladric looked at her directly. Then you will leave this palace alive and untouched, with enough wealth to start a new life far from this city. I give you my word. Something in his tone made her believe him this ancient, powerful thing that had crowned her on a whim to save her life. He meant it. Fine, Brielle said, lifting her chin. What's the first trial? The first trial was survival. They left her in a chamber beneath the palace, in tunnels that stretched back centuries, with nothing but a candle and instructions to find her way out before the flame died. The darkness pressed close, absolute beyond the small circle of light, and somewhere in that darkness, things moved with whispers of sound that might have been wind through stone or something far worse. Brielle walked, trying to remember orienteering lessons from a college elective she'd barely passed. The tunnels branched and rebranched, each path identical in its medieval stonework and oppressive shadows. Her candle burned steadily down. She was trying to decide between 2 identical corridors when she heard it, breathing that wasn't hers, slow and deliberate and close. Hello? Her voice cracked. A figure materialized at the edge of her candlelight Sarath, the hostile vampire from the coronation. He leaned against the wall with crossed arms, watching her with those unnerving red eyes. Lost co-regent. Is helping me allowed? I'm not here to help. I'm here to observe. He tilted his head. And perhaps to understand why Vladric has lost his mind over a human who can't even navigate a simple maze. Then you're wasting your time, Brielle muttered, choosing the left path. Sarath followed, silent as shadows. After several turns, Brielle realized her candle had burned halfway down. Why do you hate me? She asked, too tired for diplomacy. I don't hate you. I pity you. Sarath's voice held something that might have been genuine sadness. Vladric is the strongest king we've had in 5 centuries, ruthless, brilliant, untouchable. And in one moment of inexplicable weakness, he bound himself to a human who will die in the blink of an immortal eye. You're not a queen. You're a tragedy waiting to happen. The words hit harder than Brielle expected. He didn't bind himself to me. He saved my life using some legal loophole. You think that's all it was? Sarath laughed, bitter. The law required him to acknowledge you, perhaps offer you protection. It didn't require him to place the crown on your head with his own hands, to invoke the sharing right, to threaten the entire council on your behalf. He could have kept you alive with far less risk to his throne. Brielle stopped walking. Then why did he do it? That, Sarath said quietly, is what terrifies us all. He vanished, leaving her alone in the dark. But when she rounded the next corner, a small arrow had been scratched into the stone, pointing right. She followed it, found another and another, a trail that led her up stone stairs and through a final door that opened into blessed lamplight corridors. Her candle guttered out as she crossed the threshold. Vladric waited on the other side, Isolde and 2 other council members flanking him. His eyes tracked to the dead candle in Brielle's hand, then to her face. She emerges, Isolde said. Impressive. Most humans panic in the dark. Brielle was too exhausted to feel triumphant. Is that all? For today. Vladric gestured, and Mira appeared to guide Brielle away. The second trial begins tomorrow night. Back in her chambers, Brielle collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the sapphire gown. Someone had left food, real food, not blood, and she ate mechanically, mind spinning. He could have kept you alive with far less risk to his throne. Why had Vladric gone so far? And why did she care? He was a vampire, an immortal predator, something that saw humans as cattle. The only smart thing to do was survive these trials and take his offer to leave. Except she kept remembering the weight of his hand on hers, the absolute certainty in his voice when he'd said he preferred her alive. Sleep took her somewhere around dawn, and when she woke, Mira was there with another gown, silver this time, and news that the second trial would take place in the great hall before the full court. What kind of trial? Brielle asked as Mira laced the dress. Wisdom. Mira's fingers worked with practiced efficiency. They'll present you with scenarios, challenges of governance and justice. Answer well, and you prove you can rule. Answer poorly. I get executed, or humiliated enough that you flee on your own. Mira met her eyes in the mirror. The king attends tonight. Remember that. The great hall blazed with candlelight. Every vampire in the palace assembled to watch. Brielle stood at the center of a circle of scrutiny. Vladric seated on a throne that looked carved from a single piece of black crystal, crown on his brow, face utterly impassive. Isolde stepped forward. The second trial begins. Brielle Zimmerman, you stand as co-regent claimant. Prove you possess the wisdom to rule the night. The scenarios came rapid fire. A human had discovered their existence and threatened exposure. What would she do? A vampire had violated territorial law. What punishment? Two ancient families feuded over hunting grounds. How would she mediate? Brielle answered as best she could, trying to balance justice with pragmatism, mercy with strength. Some answers drew murmurs of approval, others sharp hisses of displeasure. Then Isolde smiled, and Brielle knew the real test had arrived. Final scenario, Isolde said. A vampire of the king's inner circle has been discovered conspiring against the throne, planning assassination. The law demands death, but this vampire is beloved by many, and executing them risks civil war. She paused. What does the wise queen do? The hall fell silent. Brielle's mind raced. This wasn't theoretical. Isolde's smile was too sharp, too knowing. This was real, or about to be real. She glanced at Vladric, but his expression gave nothing away. I would, Brielle said slowly, investigate further. Because if a beloved vampire is conspiring against a king as strong as Vladric, either they're genuinely convinced he's unfit, in which case the king needs to address legitimate concerns, or they're being manipulated by someone who wants civil war regardless of the execution's outcome. Isolde's smile faltered. You would show weakness. I would show intelligence. Brielle's voice strengthened. A wise ruler doesn't just enforce law. They understand why the law is being broken, and they don't let themselves be maneuvered into no-win situations by people asking loaded questions. She looked directly at Isolde. Is there really a conspiracy? Or are you testing whether I'll advocate for mercy you can exploit or cruelty you can use to turn the court against me? The silence stretched. Then Vladric stood, and every vampire in the hall immediately focused on him. The trial is concluded, he said. She passes. Isolde's face went white with fury, but she bowed. As you say, my king. Vladric descended from the throne and offered Brielle his hand. Come. He led her from the hall through corridors she didn't recognize, upstairs that wound into older sections of the palace until they emerged onto a balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool, stars bright above the light pollution. You did well, Vladric said. I nearly died in a maze and probably made an enemy of your entire council. You survived the maze, and Isolde was already your enemy. He stood at the balcony edge, profile sharp against the skyline. She leads the faction that believes humans are beneath us, that I violated natural order by acknowledging you. Have you? Brielle moved to stand beside him, keeping careful distance. Violated natural order? Perhaps. He glanced at her, and for the first time, she saw something almost human in his expression, uncertainty or the memory of it. The law I invoked is real, but Sarath was correct. I could have protected you with less. I chose not to. Why? Because when you fell into that throne room, looking up at me with terror and defiance in equal measure, I felt something I haven't felt in 3 centuries. His voice dropped. Curiosity about what you would do, what you would say, how you would face a world that had just become infinitely more dangerous. So I'm an experiment. No, the word came hard. You're an impossibility I can't stop thinking about. Brielle's breath caught. You're a vampire. I'm human. I'll be dead in 50 years a blink for you. This is insane. Yes, and you have an entire immortal world to rule. I'm a tour guide who trips over thresholds. Yes? Then why? Because, Vladric interrupted, finally turning to face her fully. In 500 years of existence, You're the first person who looked at me and saw someone who might make mistakes, who questioned my choices, who treated me like I could be wrong." His hand lifted, hesitated, then carefully tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Everyone else sees the king. You saw a man making an illogical decision and demanded to know why. His fingers were cool against her skin. Brielle should pull away, should remember what he was. She didn't move. "The third trial," she whispered. "What is it?" "Will." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "Isolde will try to break you. If you can withstand her, the council must confirm you. And if I can't, then I will give you the life I promised and spend eternity wondering what might have been." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone on the balcony with a racing heart and the taste of impossible longing. The third trial came the next evening. They dressed Brielle in black this time, a gown that looked like morning silk, and led her to a chamber she hadn't seen before, circular, with mirrors covering every wall, reflecting her image into infinity. Isolde waited in the center, flanked by 4 other vampires Brielle didn't recognize. "The trial of will," Isolde announced. "Simple in concept. Survive what we show you and you prove yourself worthy. Break and you prove yourself the weak human we know you to be." "Show me what?" Brielle asked, but Isolde was already moving, touching something on the wall. The mirrors rippled like water, and suddenly Brielle wasn't looking at her reflection anymore. She was looking at her apartment, her real apartment across the city, where her roommate Jenna sat on their battered couch watching television, completely unaware that Brielle had vanished from her life 3 days ago. As she watched, Jenna's phone rang. She answered, face crumpling at whatever she heard, and began to cry. "Your human world." Isolde's voice drifted through the vision. "Missing you, mourning you. This is what you abandon if you take the crown. Every connection, every friendship. You become something separate, isolated, cut off from the life you knew." The scene shifted. Brielle's mother, looking older than she should, staring at a police officer shaking his head. No leads, no evidence, just gone. "They'll never know what happened to you," Isolde continued. "You'll watch them age and die while you remain in shadow, unable to comfort them, unable to explain." Brielle's throat tightened. "Stop. And what do you gain? The affection of a creature that's killed more humans than you've ever met. Vladric isn't capable of love. We're not built for it. We're apex predators, and you're prey wearing a crown." The mirrors showed Vladric now, standing in shadow, holding a woman who looked like Brielle, except her head lolled at a broken angle, throat torn, eyes empty. "This is what we are," Isolde whispered. "This is what he is. And you think you can stand beside him as equal? You're a flickering candle. He's eternal night." The visions multiplied. Brielle alone in vast chambers, aging while Vladric remained unchanged. Brielle being drained by beautiful vampires, while Vladric watched impassively. Brielle's funeral, attended by no one, forgotten by both worlds. The room spun. Brielle's knees hit the floor. "There it is," Isolde said with satisfaction. "The breaking point. Admit you don't belong here, and I'll let you leave. Cling to this fantasy and—" "No," Brielle's voice came out rough. "You're wrong. About what, child?" "About him." Brielle forced herself upright, facing the mirrors, facing Isolde. "You want me to believe Vladric is incapable of caring, but he invoked ancient law to save someone he'd never met. He threatened his own council rather than let them harm me. He offered me a way out even though it would mean losing me." She stepped forward. "That's not a predator toying with prey. That's someone choosing compassion when cruelty would be easier. Sentimentality. And you're wrong about me." Brielle's voice strengthened. "Yes, I'll lose my old life. Yes, I'll watch people I love age while I stay separate, but I've been half living for years, going through motions, working jobs I don't care about, pretending I'm building towards something that never arrives. You're showing me what I'll lose. You're not showing me what I'll gain. And what's that? Purpose. Power to actually change things." And Brielle met Isolde's red eyes without flinching. "And maybe, possibly, something real with someone who sees me as more than just another person passing through his immortal life." The mirrors went dark. Isolde stared at her with something that might have been respect or hatred, or both. "You pass," she said finally. "Foolish but unbroken. The council meets in 1 hour for final confirmation. Prepare yourself, girl. The easy part is over." She swept from the chamber, leaving Brielle alone in darkness. The council chamber was packed, every vampire of significance in attendance. Brielle stood beside Vladric before the obsidian table, wearing a gown of deep crimson that Mira had laced so tight she could barely breathe. Isolde called the session to order. The trials are complete. By ancient law, the council must now vote, confirm the human as co-regent, or reject her and nullify the coronation rite. This is unprecedented, someone called out. The law is absolute, Vladric said, voice cutting through dissent. You will vote. The first votes came reluctantly. Deny, deny, deny. Brielle forced herself to breathe steadily. She'd known this would happen, known they would never accept confirm. Brielle's head snapped toward the speaker Sarath, standing with arms crossed, glaring at her with profound irritation. She survived the maze, he said flatly, showed wisdom beyond her years, didn't break under pressure. By the law, she's proven worthy. He paused. Whether I like it or not. The vote continued. More denials, but a few grudging confirmations. It was going to be close. Then Isolde stood. The chamber fell silent. I vote, she said slowly, to deny. Brielle's heart sank. But, Isolde continued, smile sharp, I also invoke ancient right of challenge. The girl has proven herself to the trials. Let her prove herself to me. Personal combat. If she survives, I'll reverse my vote and guarantee confirmation. If she falls, the smile widened, then the matter is settled permanently. No, Vladric said, voice like iron. I forbid it. You cannot forbid ancient right, my king. You, of all people, know the old laws bind even you. Vladric's jaw tightened. For the first time since Brielle had met him, he looked genuinely afraid. I accept, Brielle said. Every eye turned to her. Brielle, Vladric started. I accept the challenge, she repeated, meeting Isolde's gaze. When and where? Isolde's smile turned feral. Now, in the old arena beneath the palace, and may your courage last longer than your mortality. The old arena was exactly that ancient stone, circular, with rows of seats carved into rock where vampires gathered to watch. Brielle stood in the center, given a sword she barely knew how to hold, facing Isolde across sand that looked rust-dark even in lamplight. Vladric appeared at the arena's edge, hands gripping stone hard enough to crack it. Isolde? You're elder vampire. This isn't combat. It's execution. Then the girl shouldn't have accepted. Isolde rolled her shoulders leisurely. But don't worry, my king. I'll make it quick. Relatively. Isolde? This is what you risked when you crowned her, Vladric. Isolde's voice echoed through the arena. You made her a player in our world. Now she faces its consequences. The fight began without ceremony. Isolde moved like liquid shadow, closing the distance between them in a blink. Brielle swung wildly, felt the sword meet only air as Isolde danced aside and struck a casual blow that sent Brielle sprawling. Get up, Isolde said. Brielle got up, swung again, missed again. Another blow sent her down harder. You're embarrassing yourself. And him. The arena swam. Brielle tasted blood, but she pushed upright again, adjusting her grip on the sword, watching how Isolde moved, trying to find pattern in the impossible speed. Isolde blurred forward. This time, Brielle didn't swing. She dropped under the expected strike and thrust upward, blind, desperate. The blade caught Isolde's side, not deep, barely a scratch, but the elder vampire hissed and leaped back. The arena erupted in shocked whispers. Lucky, Isolde said, but her smile had vanished. They circled each other. Brielle's vision tunneled to just this, Isolde's movements, the weight of the sword, the desperate mathematics of survival. When Isolde attacked again, Brielle was ready. She dodged left, used momentum to slash across, and this time, the blade bit deeper, drawing black blood. Isolde snarled. Enough playing. The real assault came then too fast to track, blows from every angle. Brielle blocked what she could, took hits that cracked ribs, crushed her defense. She went down hard, sword skittering away. Isolde loomed over her. Did you truly think you could win? You're human, mortal, weak. Brielle couldn't breathe through the pain, but she met Isolde's eyes and said, I'm still here. Something flickered across Isolde's face. Yes, she said quietly. You are. She stepped back. The challenge is satisfied. Brielle blinked through blood. What? I didn't say you had to win. I said you had to survive. Isolde turned to address the arena. She's faced Elder Vampire in combat and lives. By ancient right, she's proven her courage and will. My vote changes to confirm. The arena exploded into chaos, arguing voices, shocked exclamations. Through it all, Vladric vaulted over the edge and landed beside Brielle, gathering her broken form with infinite care. You're insane, he said, and his voice shook. Completely insane. Did I win? You survived, that's victory enough. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her from the arena while his court debated around them. The council will confirm you, and then I'm locking you in your chambers for a century, until you learn self-preservation. Brielle managed a laugh that turned into a cough. Dramatic. I'm a vampire king. It's expected. He took her to chambers larger than the ones she'd occupied before his chambers, she realized, all dark wood and crimson silk. Laid her on a bed soft as clouds and began carefully, methodically checking her injuries. Nothing fatal, he murmured. Ribs cracked, not broken, heavy bruising. You'll recover. His hand stilled on her shoulders. But if you ever accept a challenge like that again, You'll what? Brielle caught his hand. Lock me up? Order me around? I thought we were co-regents. We are, his throat worked. Which means I can't command you. Can't protect you when you throw yourself into danger. Can only stand by and watch while you... He broke off. While I what? While you make me feel mortal again, he said roughly. Breakable. Afraid. He leaned down, forehead resting against hers, careful of her injuries. I have existed 5 centuries without fear. And then you fell into my throne room and destroyed my peace. Brielle's uninjured hand came up to cup his face, marveling at the cool smoothness of his skin. The law was just an excuse, wasn't it? Yes. You wanted me from the moment I crashed your coronation. Yes. That's incredibly inconvenient, Brielle whispered, since I'm mortal and you're eternal and this will end badly. Yes. His eyes opened, burning crimson inches from hers. Unless we make different choices. What kind of choices? The kind where you don't leave when the council confirms you, where you stay and learn to rule, where you let me teach you our world. His hand covered hers against his face, where, eventually, when you're ready and only if you choose it, I offer you what I am. Immortality. Eternity. Beside me. Brielle's heart stuttered. You're talking about turning me. One day. Not now you're not ready, and I won't steal your mortality before you've lived it fully. But the option exists. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes properly. I'm saying I want forever with you, Brielle Zimmerman, however we build it. She should say no, should recognize this as insanity, Stockholm Syndrome, fantasy. Instead, she said, kiss me. He did. It was gentle despite everything. He was cool lips against her human warmth, careful of her injuries, but with an intensity that made her forget about broken ribs and bruises. His hand cradled her face like she was precious metal, and when they finally broke apart, his expression held something raw and unguarded. The council meets at dawn to formalize your confirmation, he said. You should rest. Stay. When he hesitated, she added, Please, I don't want to be alone right now. He stretched out beside her, not touching beyond their joined hands, and stayed while she drifted into healing sleep. The council confirmation was pure ceremony. Isolde had guaranteed enough votes, and even the hardliners seemed subdued after Brielle's survival in the arena. When Vladric placed the crown on her head this time, it was official. She was co-regent of the vampire territories, ruling jointly with the ancient king who'd saved her life by binding his throne to hers. The celebration afterward was surreal vampires bowing to her, calling her queen, offering loyalty she hadn't earned and didn't fully understand. Through it all, Vladric stayed close, a steady presence at her side. It was Sereth who finally pulled her aside, glass of something dark in hand. Congratulations, he said. You've achieved the impossible. The court accepts you. Do you? Brielle asked. He studied her for a long moment. I think you'll either be the best thing to happen to Vladric in centuries, or the thing that finally breaks him. Possibly both. He raised his glass in mock toast. Try not to get yourself killed immediately. He'd never recover. Over the following weeks, Brielle learned what it meant to rule. Vladric taught her vampire law, territory politics, the complex web of alliances that kept their world stable. She sat beside him in council, offered opinions that grew more confident as she understood the dynamics. And slowly, impossibly, the court began to respect her, not as a human playing queen, but as a real voice in their governance. She also learned what it meant to be with Vladric. He was patient, courting her properly despite their unusual circumstances. Midnight walks through palace gardens, quiet conversations in his library that held books from centuries past, small touches that grew into larger ones, his hand at the small of her back, her head resting on his shoulder as they reviewed territorial reports, and the kisses. Careful at first, then increasingly less so as Brielle healed and trust built between them. "You're different than I expected," Brielle said one night as they stood on their balcony overlooking the city. "Not cold or cruel, just careful, like you're afraid of breaking things." "I've broken many things," Vladric said quietly. "In 5 centuries, you accumulate regrets. I'm trying not to add you to that list." "You won't," she turned in his arms. "I'm tougher than I look. I survived your coronation, your trials, and Isolde's arena. I can survive whatever comes next." "I hope so." His fingers traced her face. "Because I find I cannot imagine eternity without you anymore." "Then stop imagining it alone," Brielle said, and kissed him with all the certainty she'd found in these strange weeks, this impossible life that had started with a single misstep and become something she couldn't bear to lose. 3 months into her reign, the conspiracy Isolde had referenced in the wisdom trial revealed itself. A faction of younger vampires frustrated with ancient traditions, resentful of the old family's control, had orchestrated Brielle's intrusion into the coronation. They'd unlocked the door she'd found, left subtle markers to guide any lost human directly into the throne room, hoping to create chaos they could exploit. They'd expected the human to be killed, sparking outrage that would destabilize Vladric's rule. Instead, he'd invoked ancient law and created a co-regent, throwing their plans into disarray. Now they were trying assassination. The attack came during a diplomatic reception when Brielle was surrounded by foreign vampire delegations. A blade meant for her heart was intercepted by Vladric's impossible speed, and then the ancient king showed his court exactly why he'd ruled unchallenged for 2 centuries. The conspirators didn't survive the hour. In the aftermath, Brielle stood in the blood-spattered reception hall. Blood that wasn't hers only because Vladric had moved faster than thought and felt the weight of what she'd become. Not just a queen, but someone vampires would kill to remove. Someone whose existence threatened centuries of tradition. "You're shaking," Vladric said, appearing at her side, wiping black blood from his hands. "They tried to kill me." "Yes?" "And failed." His arm came around her waist. "The court now knows what happens to those who threaten what's mine. It won't happen again." "You can't promise that." "No. I can only promise I'll destroy anyone who tries." He turned her to face him. "This is the life I offer, Brielle. Beautiful and terrible. Power and danger. Centuries of navigating politics that can turn deadly in a heartbeat. If you want to leave, I don't." The words came without hesitation. "I don't want to leave. Even knowing what you risk? Especially knowing." Brielle reached up, cupping his face between her hands. "Because I'm not just staying for the throne or the power. I'm staying for you, for this impossible thing we're building, and I refuse to let conspiracies or assassination attempts take that away." Something in his expression cracked open relief and joy and devotion so intense it should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like coming home. I love you," Vladric said, the words clearly unpracticed, rough. "I don't know if I'm capable of it the way humans are, but whatever this is, this need to have you near, this terror of losing you, this certainty that my existence only has meaning if you're in it, if that's love, then I love you beyond reason." Brielle's eyes burned. "That's definitely love, and for the record, I love you too, completely, even though you're an overdramatic vampire king with control issues." "Especially because of that," he suggested, and kissed her breathless in a hall still reeking of violence, while guards cleaned up the evidence of what happened to those who threatened their queen. The turning happened a year later. Brielle had ruled beside Vladric long enough to be certain this was the life she wanted, the future she chose. The court had fully accepted her, even Isolde occasionally offering approval. She'd navigated treaties, settled disputes, and proven herself capable of the throne she'd accidentally claimed, but she was still human, still aging, however slowly, still mortal. "Are you certain?" Vladric asked for the 100th time as they stood in his private chambers, the night chosen, the decision made. "I'm certain." Brielle took his hands. "I want centuries with you. I want to rule properly, not constantly aware of the clock running down. And I want," she smiled, "I want forever with the man who crowned me before I could stand, who gave me a throne to protect me, who taught me how to be a queen and loved me for exactly who I was." "Then I'll give you eternity," he said, and kissed her one last time as a human before his fangs descended and he bit down with ceremonial precision, draining her to the edge of death, then opened his own wrist and held it to her lips. The transformation took 3 days. Brielle woke on the 4th dawn with crimson eyes, white skin, and senses so sharp the world had become a completely different place. She was stronger, faster, and when she looked at Vladric, who hadn't left her side through the entire turning, she saw him with new understanding, saw the ancient power and perfect control, the weight of centuries, and the vulnerability he hid beneath stone composure. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I could tear down mountains, or dance on air, or rule the world," she laughed, giddy with the rush of immortality. "Is it always like this?" "The intensity fades, the power remains." He pulled her close, and now they were matched eternal creatures, neither breakable. "Welcome to forever, my queen." The second coronation happened that night. This time, Brielle walked into the throne room deliberately, wearing a gown of midnight blue embroidered with silver stars. This time, when Vladric placed the crown on her head, she stood steady beside him, equal in truth and not just law. The court knelt, all of them, even Isolde, before their king and queen. "Rise," Brielle said, her new voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. "We have much work ahead." And they did. Centuries of work, of building something new from the ancient foundations of vampire society, of navigating politics and power, danger and intrigue, of love that deepened as the years passed, as human memory faded and was replaced by an immortal existence more vivid than any mortal life could be. On their 100th anniversary, the night they'd first met by accidental intrusion, Vladric took Brielle back to the balcony where he'd first admitted his feelings. "Regrets?" he asked. "Not one." She leaned against him, looking out over a city that had changed and grown while they'd remained. "Though I do sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd found the bathroom instead of crashing your coronation. Then I would have ruled alone, powerful and miserable, until the centuries wore me to nothing." He turned her to face him. "Instead, I have you, my unexpected queen, my impossible love, the woman who tripped into my life and saved it." "Dramatic," Brielle said, but kissed him anyway, there on the balcony under stars that would shine long after the current world faded into history. Below them, the vampire palace thrived under their joint rule, ancient traditions balanced with new ideas, power tempered by wisdom, strength guided by compassion. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, built from a crown given in desperation and accepted in courage, grown into something that would last as long as immortality itself. And if sometimes, late at night, Brielle thought about the life she'd left behind, the friends and family who'd mourned her disappearance before moving on, the human existence she'd traded for eternity, she felt no regret. Only gratitude that she'd taken that wrong turn, stumbled through that unlocked door, and fallen into the arms of a vampire king who'd seen her not as an intruder, but as the answer to 5 centuries of loneliness. She'd crashed into his coronation. He'd crowned her before she stood, and together they'd built forever.